Good evening, everybody, or wherever you are in the world. I hope you're having a great day. And some of the subjects that have been the most viral on this channel include Epstein, Maxwell, Diddy, Keir Starmer. Well, we have got a guest today, first time ever on the channel, who has researched all of those subjects, folks. So I'm honored to have Lauren Lunn-Farrow with us. And if you want to support her important work, links are at the top of the description box. There's an Instagram and there is an X. So before we get into all this, and viewers, please put any questions you've got in the live chat. I will star them and we will definitely get them to Lauren. Before we get into all this then, Lauren, what got you into all of this?
Well, I've been in the media industry since I was 18. And I'm 38 now. And there was something about the Epstein case that, I mean, where do we start on it? But for me, it was the weaponization of money, of power, of influence. And I have 2 daughters, and I feel like I've seen so much gaslighting of the victims. And it's really affected me. I don't work in mainstream media anymore, so I can talk unfiltered. But I just can't believe we're in a situation where this story, if someone had written a book, a publisher would not take it because it would not be believable. And what's so chilling is every day we seem to learn more about this. And so I see a lot of parallels between Epstein and also Diddy. And I will always advocate for women and children. And it's something that I, will speak about because in many ways the media have enabled this to happen. And we have seen Epstein and Diddy build kind of bulletproof rings around themselves, different rings they've built in terms of protection. But it all comes back down to money, influence, and power. And that is what stops the victims getting justice and survivors getting justice. And we see them gaslit time and time again when those are the stories that we need to be hearing. But I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand the mechanics of how the media work, because in many ways it's simple and in many ways it's complex, which is a juxtaposition. But if you have money, you can get a story stopped. And if we look at the court case going on with Raimir and Jay-Z, for example, we can see that Alex Spiro has been very busy. I'll let your viewers research that more themselves. But a lot of things don't make it into mainstream press. So people tend to think, oh, it didn't happen. Oh, it's not true. Oh, that went away. And so, for example, if you want to look at kind of what having a, can I swear?
If you wanted to reach more people, it's better to, instead of saying the F word, say effing instead of the actual word.
I was going to say, if you have an S-hot lawyer, you are able to really control the narrative. And what we see with people, I won't name them, but the elites, the people that are holding the power, they are able to really tightly control this narrative because they are micromanaging the press. And so what you see is anytime someone within the press steps out of line, they are sent, a cease and desist. They're sent a legal letter. They're put on notice. And it's a very strong warning. Your card is marked. And we see this. So and I'm not saying that Alex Spiro's done that, but what I am saying is that when you look at the Raimir case, the man that is claiming to be his son, the reporting just stops in the mainstream press, and he's painted as really someone that is fame hungry, someone that is after Jay-Z's money, someone that has been harassing Jay-Z. And I started to look into this because I think now more than ever, we have to be taking our news from so many different primary sources, and we can come into that later. But this is what the mainstream press have said with him is so far from the truth. And Nicki Minaj enters the chat, and you see all of a sudden this story is picking up pace. But the point is that if you have the money and the resources to afford the best legal minds in the world, you hold so much power.
Yeah, we've had Raimir on the channel several times, and he is a lovely spirit. He's got such warm, positive energy, and you can tell there's nothing about him that is after the money, and it's so sad. It's like a catch-22 story, isn't it? Whereby if he gets acknowledged, then he's acknowledging the age of the mother, which could damage his reputation. So,
Yeah.
and you know, in the beginning, Raimir reached out to him, and there was some communication, but then it all got shut down. And we've had legal stuff from Diddy's lawyers, we've had legal stuff from Jay-Z's lawyers, just to name a few. And I did write a book about Epstein. There it is. Who killed Epstein, Prince Andrew or Bill Clinton? Which leads to the first viewer question, which is, let me just scroll back to it. Let me see. So Rodrigo wants to know, why isn't Prince Andrew in jail? Because this is a classic case of controlling the narrative, but then blowing the narrative wide open.
Yeah. I mean, Rodrigo, I ask myself that question a lot. I would love to be able to give you a definitive answer. What I can say is that you need, as kind of people with a critical mind, we need to ask ourselves these questions. Would you pay millions and millions of pounds to someone, Virginia, if you were innocent? And I think we also have to ask other questions. The same rules do not apply to the one percenters. And by that, I mean that they are in a position of luxury where, and it does come back to you know, the best lawyers in the business. There's a reason why, for example, you see footballers time and time again get off of speeding charges. You know, you're reading about them getting it 4 or 5 times in a row, and you're thinking, hang on, I was going 30 and a 40 and I've got a speeding ticket and all of these things, because they know the lawyers to go to. You know, there's Mr. Loophole for this, there's Mr. Loophole for that. The Epstein saga is rot from the top down to the core. It's disgusting. And I think that Prince Andrew, I have to be careful what I say on this, but I'll let my silence speak instead of my words on that one.
Okay, that's fine. So it's probably one of the biggest stories in the world right now with this cover-up situation, because you had Trump and the other people, you know, Bondi, Patel, campaigning on releasing everything they could find, and then they get in, do a complete U-turn.
Nothing.
Yeah, and just do it in such a condescending fashion. Yeah. And it's Streisand effect on steroids right now, because it's been running for a month, and it was like Elon who set the fire. He must be laughing his arse off. And you know, even in Scotland, Trump's getting harassed right now by reporters and giving statements about Mar-a-Lago and the girls that were stolen from there by Epstein. I was just watching that before I came on the air. So, you know, is it because Epstein had compromised the donor class, which gives money to both parties to keep all of the contracts rolling, and that's how it's all manipulated? Is it because both parties want to protect the donor class? Is that why they're all, you know, falling in line to cover this up?
Well, I think let's look at what we've got, which is some facts, is the Black Book. Okay. And the Black Book, I was reading it front to back. And as a PR professional that's worked in the industry for 20 years, it blew my mind. The way he networked was like nothing I have ever seen. He, and you know, whether it was Maxwell giving some of these names, the society names, it would seem, these are the creme de la creme of power across the world. It is such it's a masterclass in networking, this book, and in how to make contacts and how to potentially cover your back and ensure that you are controlling your narrative. And in this book, you know, if we go back in time, the names that I'll say now, and obviously we have to say that it doesn't implicate them, they're just names. And if you research it, you won't be surprised to hear that many have come out and said, never met him. But I don't think that can be all 1,500 names in the book. So, but the names in the book, so we've got Geordie Gregg, previous Mail on Sunday editor, who now edits The Independent. Matthew Freud, probably the biggest PR in the country, who was married to Elizabeth Murdoch, Rupert Murdoch's daughter. Got Jenny Halpin, which no one picked up on. Huge PR, huge. She, when I was kind of coming up the ranks in PR, she created the influencer as such, you know, the society girls, the back pages in Tatler, ES magazine. She created the socialite. Naomi Campbell, Caroline Stanbury, Trini Woodall, Mariella Frostrup, Caprice, Liz Hurley, Tanya Breyer. Now, I emailed Tanya Breyer's agent because I wanted to see, I couldn't find a comment online about her being in the Black Book. And I thought, that's strange. I'm sure it's, you know, the fact I haven't found it. Didn't reply. Find that a bit weird. Tara Palmer Tompkinson. And then we've got Conrad Black. We've got everyone in this book that is pulling the strings. And so I don't know if it is because of, you know, parties, this and that, but I know that this isn't organic networking, because in my experience, when I've had clients who I've found incredibly hard to manage, and I felt almost overwhelmed with how much work there is to do to change a narrative or to control it, I've created something similar to the Black Book, where I've almost done like a spidergram on the wall, and I've worked out, right, where are my weak spots? Where do I need to fill it in? Who do I not have sway over? You know, where's my Achilles heel? And that is exactly what they've done with this Black Book.
So you mentioned Murdoch then. I mean, there's two huge lawsuits in the news right now. It's Murdoch versus Trump, and it's the Macrons versus Candace Owens.
Yeah.
What do you make of those two, please?
I mean, I'm really interested to see how the Candace Owens one rolls out. She's very, very sure what she said is correct. I think her series was fascinating. So I'll be watching that really closely. I mean, we don't often see Candice have to admit she's wrong, is what I will say. So, you know, she's really put her neck on the line with this. With Trump and Murdoch, I just don't know at this point, is it theatre? You know, I have a huge distrust in the mainstream media and in politicians. And, you know, we've been given so much proof time and time again that the mainstream media and politicians can't be trusted. So I'll watch closely, but I can't call that because I don't have full faith in either of them.
So Elon lit the fire under Trump, and Elon has recently posted that how this is going to end is Maxwell is going to give up some Democrats and maybe some donors on that side of the political fence, and then she's going to get a pardon or a sentence reduction, and nothing's going to be mentioned about anything that might compromise Trump. Do you think that Elon Musk is accurate in his assessment there? And do you think that Maxwell is going to fall through the cracks? Or do you think she's going to get sent back to prison to serve the remainder of her 20-year sentence?
I don't think she'll serve her whole sentence, no. And I think that they, especially after the Diddy trial, now I know he's not been sentenced yet, but, you know, we don't feel as members of the public that justice has been served for the victims. And we feel, you know, there's a lot of anger about that. If they pardon, if GHISLAINE gets a pardon, someone else is going down, or multiple people are going down. You know, she's not going to get a pardon for no reason. And there are reports saying, you know, she spoke the truth. Does she even know what the truth is? Because if you look at her upbringing and you look at who her father was and you look at all the the shadiness that was normalized for her, I wouldn't say she has any grasp of normality or truth or anything close to that.
Yeah, and if people want to do a deep dive on that, we put a podcast up yesterday.
I watched it. It was brilliant.
Who is Ghislaine Maxwell? I'm going to put it in the live chat right now, and if you're watching on replay, it's in the description box. Fascinating background account. So, you know, Trump, Bondi, Patel, etc., they felt the backlash of covering up the Epstein files and not releasing anything. To go one step further and to slap the survivors in the face by giving Maxwell a pardon or a sentence reduction, how are they going to handle that through the media? Because there's a tsunami's going to come down on them, surely.
You say that, but then there's a lot of people within the media still that are in the black book. So, you know, it's murky waters. It really is.
So you're saying they're so connected, the media is going to manage it to the masses?
Yeah, I do not trust them at all. And I think as well, what we've seen from Bondi and Patel and everyone, they have truly taken the public for fools. And it's blown my mind that they think we are that stupid. And that they're forgetting we're in a time now where we're connected via X. We've got, you know, freedom to go on YouTube. We aren't living in Russia. And they really think we are that stupid that we will be fed propaganda and believe it. You know, oh, the cameras weren't working when Epstein died. Oh, they're working. Oh, 2 minutes is missing in this video. Oh, we found the 2 minutes in this video. You know, oh, there were... it's just so ludicrous. Like, I could go on and on and on with examples, and it's like they're hoping for fatigue narrative to kick in, and they want people to get bored. And this is why we must not let them get bored. We must not get bored of this, and we must continue to use our voices, because we are talking about minors that have been SRA'd. This is horrific. And I kind of feel sometimes this is all normalized, and you see these silly memes go around of Epstein and Diddy. It's not funny, and it's not funny because there are children at the center of this when it comes to Epstein that had no choice, that were trafficked, they've had their voices wiped from the media. And one thing I wanted to talk about is the original Vanity Fair story, because I think it's really important that your viewers understand how these stories get blocked. Because when something like Epstein or Savile comes out, people, you know, and sadly conspiracy theorist is now, you know, meant as an offense, when I actually think it's quite a compliment that you're a critical thinker. But people can think, how can this truly not come out? You know, it couldn't possibly be true. But around these people, you have a still war of publicists and lawyers. And in the Vanity Fair story, there was a British journalist called Vicky Ward, and she really wanted to expose Epstein. So she went to her editor, and she was writing the piece, and she'd spoken to the Farmer sisters. When she filed the piece, it didn't get through, and it got stopped. And there were reports that Epstein had turned up in the office. There were reports that Graydon Carter, the editor, was put under a lot of pressure by Epstein. Now, Vicky also was threatened by Epstein when she was pregnant, which is grotesque. She was told that her husband, who worked for Hollinger International, which was owned by Conrad Black, who also owned the Telegraph, the Sunday Telegraph, the New York Daily News, and the Spectator. It's a lot. She was told, Epstein said, "I can get your husband fired." Now, Conrad Black was also her husband's step-uncle. Now, if you are under those many, you know, that many threats and you're pregnant, that's a horrific position to be in. She was she was told the article won't run. And the only line that made it through was that he had a fondness for young women, not young girls, young women. And when I was doing this deep dive on the article, I came across an article in a New York publication, and it was really, really uncomplimentary about Ward. And I thought, this is very strange. And Carter had said she was untrustworthy, didn't know basic journalism ethics, her stories didn't stand up, and it went on and on. And I thought, this is really strange. This is a really strange take, because I would think this is a really brave, resilient woman that is trying to get something across the line and get victims' voices heard and break a narrative. And I looked at who owned the outlet. And it was another Condé Nast title. And Vanity Fair, of course, is owned by Condé Nast. And when you look at it, Epstein, and Brian Dawson, by the way, is someone that I'm sure, you know, he's on your channel a lot. I'm sure your viewers know of him. But he has researched this for 25 years. You know, if this is an area that you want well, there's nothing he doesn't know on Epstein. So you absolutely need to follow him. But you know, I emailed him and he said it's the top it's the top media bosses. Epstein didn't need the kind of boots on the ground. And when you're building a network of contacts, you know, many people will have boots on the ground and editors. He had the top down. And he was very clever in how he networked as well. He had photo agency bosses. He had, you know, high profile reporters. He wasn't mixing with a junior news reporter. But back to the Ward story. So they gaslit her. And they, you know, what ran in the press was really nasty. And she subsequently wrote another piece on Epstein and Maxwell that ran a decade later. And within it, she was more complimentary. She said that Epstein had humor and things like that. And the points were made, well, if you really felt so strongly about Epstein and what he did, why would you be complimentary? The woman has been threatened when she's pregnant. The woman has been told her husband is going to lose his job if she speaks up. She's paying her bills and she's playing the game. But what I found so frustrating is that the media decided to gaslight her, not actually look at the systematic failures in a structure that are enabling people like Epstein to operate.
So keep going with that then, because you're at the genesis of the whole Epstein story. And was it Julie Brown was the next one who came into it?
There are so many people that have been stopped from telling their truth, and this is how it works. So if you look at this Vanity Fair story, okay, we know that Epstein was controlling big bosses around the world and media outlets, and the media outlets are owned by a handful of people. You know, it's petrifying if you look into it, how much power these people have. And so look at the Vanity Fair story, and all you have to do is know that this was happening anywhere else, where there was a crack, where there was a hungry reporter with morals that wanted to get this story across the line. People like Ward would have been stopped left, right, and center. And you know, your relationships in the media, everything is very transactional. When I was a celebrity publicist, I wasn't spending my time with people that wouldn't benefit my clients in some way. I wasn't networking with people that were of no value to my roster. You know, everything is about protection, amplification, protecting their image, and you live and breathe it. And so I find it astounding the amount of names that have come out that are in the Black Book. And that's just the ones that have commented, because so many have just swept it under the carpet, never happened, never met him. But all of the ones that said, oh, I met him once. So what's he got? A book of 1,500 names of people he's not met? I don't think so.
So, Keir Starmer, then, if the president of the United States had been subjected to 3 separate incidences of arson attacks, 2 properties and a vehicle, I imagine that story will be all over the world. They will be interviewing the mothers, the parents of these arson suspects. They will be interviewing the school teachers. They'll be finding out how the hell were they linked to these properties. Yet this bizarre story came out about these Ukrainian male models, allegedly with Grindr accounts and adult work kind of accounts, possible escorts, and hardly anything was reported on it.
So this story it's absolutely nuts when you look at it. It was a property that he owned and then rented out, and then down the road was another property, and it was a car he used to own. Nothing adds up with this story, because if you look at Jill Dando, for example, and I know that was a murder, but and because people have been saying, oh, you know, we think it's linked to Russia. Do you think if Russia were going to do something to Keir Starmer, they would use 3 male models that could be identified so quickly? I don't think so.
These guys, they look like proper hardcore espionage type people.
Scared. But I think, look, the reason I think people haven't heard about it, and this is very common, and this is something that I want your viewers to know, is there is something called a D notice. It's a DSMA, and it is a request that is not legally binding, that is sent to press association, and it's sent to the editors of national newspapers, where it's a voluntary request, and it says, because of national security, you cannot report on these things. Now, the D notice falls outside of a Freedom of Information Act. So we have no way of knowing when they're raised, how many are raised. We will never know in real time. But there's something about this story that from a media perspective really, really doesn't add up to me. And immediately it made me think a D notice had been issued. And the issue with D notices as well is that because it was Keir Starmer, it's fallen under the counterterrorism police. So they can immediately say, well, it's Keir Starmer, it's counterterrorism. You cannot jeopardize this. You cannot report on this. And then they're relying on life happening. People are busy. You know, people aren't sat there with a notepad writing down when this case is. I am, but most people aren't. Fair enough. You know, and so they're hoping people forget. And the news agenda is rapid. It moves so fast. You know, the fact that, for example, Epstein's still in it, that is down to the public, and that is down to the whistleblowers and survivors. It's not down to the media, and it's not down to the politicians. They would have liked that to go away very quickly. But I will share a post on my Instagram about D notices, because often you will read a story in the press and you'll think, hang about, what happened? Well, that just disappeared. And it's interesting because if you Google Starmer arson attack, put it into Google News, you then see it just falls off a cliff from about the 6th of June.
Wow. So how did this guy get away with it so long? I'm going to put a picture up there next of Jimmy Savile, because they managed to protect him until he was dead. How does that happen? Offending for decades.
Yeah, I mean, out of, I was so angry. I stopped my BBC license, my television license about this.
Good.
You know, I will not pay. The BBC is not fit for purpose. It has to end. I just find this absolutely heartbreaking. And the fact so many people knew about this. And again, it's someone in a position of power. It's a predator. It's someone that's preying on vulnerable children. And it is being allowed to happen. And we know that Starmer was head of the Crown Prosecution Service. And we know his part in what I believe to be not doing enough.
He said he wasn't. He said he wasn't aware of the case at the time. You've got one of the most famous TV presenters in the history of the UK, and STARMER claiming he wasn't aware of the case at the time. Come on now.
And we see, you know, just like Epstein embroiled himself with royal family, so did Savile, you know, and it's anytime I've had a client that's used the word philanthropist, that's such a red flag to me. And you've seen that with Savile as well. And you saw it with Epstein. Absolutely grotesque.
So do you think there was a lot of shenanigans at the BBC that even when the story was coming out, the BBC was still trying to suppress it?
I think the BBC is a propaganda network. I don't think they can be trusted whatsoever. And I'd love to do like a deep dive with you on Savile another time, because I think what has gone on, again, they hope people get bored. They hope that most people aren't necessarily aware of PR spin and all of these things. I think people are really waking up to it now. And why would they be aware of it? You know, you should be able to trust your networks. You should be able to trust your politicians. But the way the BBC have behaved is disgusting. And then you see with Hugh Edwards as well. I mean, there are so many PDFs that we know about at the BBC. How it's still going, I just can't believe it.
It was just the other year. It was like every few months, a new TV presenter was getting exposed.
Mm.
When
I cancelled my TV license, because they really harassed me about it, and they tried to say, well, do you use BBC Bite Size or whatever for your children? And I said, I would not take anything from the BBC when I'm educating my children. It's just not fit for purpose. And we really have to use our voices to make things change now. Because if we allow people like the BBC to continue to operate, what makes you think anything's different? It's the same infrastructure.
So Professor Hamamoto told us that the fix was in with Diddy from the get-go because Comey was there to manipulate the outcome. Yeah. And, you know, it seems like that Diddy was protected for decades. What are your thoughts on what's gone on with him?
So, again, it's always down to the whistleblowers and the victims to change this narrative in the press. The mainstream press don't change this narrative on their own accord. They don't do the right and ethical thing. So what we saw with Diddy was September 2023 with Mayor Adams in New York. He's getting the key to New York. Then we saw Off the Grid, his album, in September 23 out. Very strange title for an album, considering what then happened. His music come back. He was honored at the VMAs, given the Icon Award at the MTV Awards. And then Cassie files the lawsuit. It's settled within 24 hours. And they're obviously hoping that goes away. But what she did was so brave because, and I really don't think it was about money at all. I know that a lot of people have come out and said, oh, you know, she wants the money. I really don't think it was that. But she gave a clear sign to other victims, like, I've burst the dam open. It's safe to come through. Because being that first victim to break through, it's not a safe place to be. And so then you see, so that was in 16th of November, Cassie filed that lawsuit. And then we've got the security raid from Homeland Security in March 24. And then from the 19th of May, the narrative changes because that's when CNN released the footage of Diddy beating Cassie. And you start to see the media become more ballsy with what they're running because they've obviously read through Cassie's lawsuit. They've seen the footage. And so they know that he can't come at them and sue, really, because they've read it in black and white. And then you see the narrative change. But this whole case, nothing adds up about this, and nothing about it. It's unbelievable, because you've got victims and whistleblowers that are giving, I believe, such credible accounts and harrowing accounts. And yes, there is synergy between them, but you know when you talk to someone whether they're telling the truth or not, and you know when you're watching an interview. You know, the Day 26, the band, the Day 26 interview, you've got 4 or 5 men, grown men reduced to tears, that are heavily insinuating human sacrifice. You've got the Jaguar Wright interview, multiple interviews where, you know, she's got a solid track record of speaking the truth. You've got Tania, one of the, you know, a victim that kind of escaped from Diddy's clutches, that's now disappeared off of Instagram. And then within this case, you've got victim 3 who doesn't turn up, and you've got a narrative that unfolds that, you know, and I'm going to speak factually here, and I think it's disgusting what he's done, but the picture they painted is, and the defense did such a weak job. It's a drug addict that's violent, that pays for sex and has an anger problem. And that's really, you know, I looked at all of the victims that they used to testify, and not to take anything away from their stories, but I don't understand why they didn't, why they niched it so much for Diddy's team to come back at and just bat everything down. Because no one asked about minors, no one asked about freak-offs at his house. It purely focused on freak-offs at hotels. And so then we're seeing this scene of, you know, him turning up with a bag of Hills, some baby oil, and it's all painted as something seedy. But we're now looking at the charges against him. There's no way he will be doing proper time for this, not a chance.
Which leads to my next question about his future, because we've had a range of viewpoints on this channel. Ex-prosecutor Lionel said that Diddy's a certified pimp now. He didn't snitch anyone out. He can parlay that now into his art and rebuilding his empire, versus Professor Hamamoto's opinion, which was that Diddy's faced a life sentence. He's probably shot himself during that period of time, and now he's got a reprieve on that. He's probably going to go and retire quietly and not want to take any more risks like he has in the past. Where do you stand on that scale?
He's not retiring quietly. He is egotistical, and he lives and breathes this industry. This is a man that defines himself in many ways like Epstein about who is hanging off his arm. Look at his contacts, look at his birthday parties, look at all of his white parties. Celebrity is in his DNA. It is what defines him. There is no way we will see him go quietly at all. I wish we would. I think what we will see, and we've seen it time and time again, this is a classic PR playbook move. He's going to use sobriety as a massive pillar to rebuild his image. Because, you know, all of the horrific behavior, that was the old Diddy, it wasn't me. I was an addict, I've been seeking treatment. And already we've seen in TMZ, you know, who seem to get every single story relating to Diddy. Anyone would think it's because one of his lawyers does a podcast with them. But we have seen those narratives slowly start to seep out, that he's working on a program, it's voluntary, he's doing it, he was doing it before the court case, all of these things. It's just rubbish. You know, he owns an alcohol brand. I very much doubt, and I say this as someone that's not drunk for 6 years and knows the work that goes into it. He is not going to be a poster boy for sobriety. And you're also going to see him really manipulate and maximize that father that father role. You know, it will be the pictures of him with the ex-partners dressed in white, all going to church, using and manipulating religion and faith, and everything that happened before will be the old Diddy, and he's disgusted by it. And you know, when you've rebranded people and you know who they are and what you've rebranded them into, and you know that a leopard doesn't change its spots, you know the way to do it, and it's redemption. You know, he will be very, very carefully managed by his PR team. And they're doing it now. They're working around the clock. I'm seeing stories being leaked all the time, just subtly trying to put this narrative out there. But do not forget, this is the man. And I don't even want to call him a man, but we've seen the Cassie video and we have seen the evidence. And so, you know, they rely on the public falling for it. And let's be honest, you know, if we look at celebrities, how many things do we all forget that they've done because of good PR? You know, I'm sure a lot of people forget that Naomi Campbell has been in jail, that Naomi Campbell has been taken off the board of her charity for various things, which people can look into. I'm sure people forget that she threw a phone at an assistant. You know, PRs are masterminds behind the scenes at manipulating and brainwashing people. And it's done very, very slowly behind the scenes. But, you know, when I was working as a PR, these were 20-hour days. You do not stop.
All right, viewers, we've got almost 1,500 watching live across all platforms. I'm going to put Lauren's links in the live chats. So if you please support her important work on Instagram and on X, and if you've got any questions, please put them in the chat as well. We've got a number of questions already gathered. I will get to them. Also, Lauren, so the stories about with Diddy, esoteric rituals, Jonathan Odie's testimony about the Black Illuminati, the Boule. We've interviewed people who've talked about Bohemian Grove and all these secret societies.
I've lost many a night going down these rabbit holes. And I have to blame you, Shaun Attwood, for the bags under my eyes and not getting to sleep until 3 a.m. because it's the rabbit hole that just keeps on giving.
So you're an expert then in the cover-up PR that's implemented by these elites, this network. Do you think that this network do participate in these rituals and these meetings, above and beyond power and money? It's gets more into the demonic side of things and ancient rituals like what David Icke describes?
Well, I think ancient rituals have always been around and there's nothing to say that they've gone anywhere. And I think with celebrities, remember, you see what they want you to see when they want you to see it. And there's a whole, I would, and I'll just give you my experience because then I can tell you, 100%, but I would carve out narratives for people in the press that were so far from the truth on what the true narrative was, because I had to keep a likable narrative going on. I had to keep a sometimes family-friendly narrative going on, someone that I had to make women likable to other women, because who spends money? It's mostly women. When, other women are launching brands. What was going on behind the scenes could not have been further from the truth. And that was kept out of the press. If people want to do something and not be seen, they know where to go to not be seen, and I think it always comes back to me when you're talking about the more satanic side of things and the rituals. Look at the whistleblowers, because you're never going to get the truth from people that may or may not be participating in these things. And I think work out yourself if you think a whistleblower is credible. I feel I can spot a credible whistleblower a mile off, because ultimately, for 20 years, rather, since I was 18, I've seen in the industry people selling their stories, and I've seen what motivates people. And I think there are some incredible whistleblowers that if you look at day 26, I have no reason to not believe what they're saying. They are, for me, completely authentic, and there's nothing about that where a red flag goes off. You know, I haven't seen them look to monetize things. I haven't seen them try and capitalize it. They're not looking for more fame. So no red flag for me is going off when they're sharing the story and what they say is their lived truth at all. And then you've got, obviously, like in any industry, you've got fake whistleblowers who are looking to make a quick buck, setting up cash apps and all of these things. But I think, you know, if people go into it and with these things, if they go down the rabbit hole, look at the whistleblowers, look at the people that are speaking. And I think there are a lot of credible people that have witnessed really horrific things in their life, and I have no reason to not believe them.
Got a question from Papa Chubby on mistrust of media. Is this a blanket approach across all mainstream platforms, or are there individual journalists doing good work through these same channels?
Yeah, I don't think any, you know, there's no one media outlet that is all bad. I know some amazing journalists who have got integrity and great ethics, and I know some brilliant PRs as well. It's more the system, the way the ecosystem is built. It is not built for justice and fairness. And, you know, there have been media outlets that get stories like the phone hacking, they get it across the line. And the mainstream media have done some great work as well. But as a whole, the way that it operates, it's not a system that I trust. And it's a system that is built by elites for elites.
Yeah, well said. So that's an interesting one. What about Lady Victoria Hervey backing Prince Andrew so much? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, she's a really strange one. She seems to have a real vested interest in this, which makes me ask questions about, did she have a role within something? What was she doing? I think she's deeply offensive. I think she's vile. I think what she said about Virginia is disgusting. And, you know, either I ask the question, did she have a role in it, or is she still trying to become relevant? And, you know, she really should have left that in the early 2000s, because people don't care about her. They don't care about what she has to say.
She trolled Virginia to the grave and was even insulting to Virginia's dad when he went on Piers Morgan. It was disgusting.
And one thing to add, it's not healthy to have that much hatred. And so you ask yourself, why are you that angry? You know, are you trying to become relevant again? Or are you involved in this in some capacity? I don't know.
All right, next question ties into Jeffrey from Taylor. Diddy and Epstein are victims too. They were groomed to be what they are to serve the agenda. Why isn't anyone saying it? What do you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, Jaguar Wright said on your channel, I think we have to stop making Diddys and we have to stop making Epsteins. I completely agree. But I also don't have the capacity to work out how to use my voice and give my brain space to protecting those people, because I think outside of being groomed, they are also deeply evil individuals. And you've seen it throughout time, even with Diddy, you know, outside of the freak-offs, you've seen what happened with Netanya Rubin, and you've seen so many of these instances and violence that is inexcusable.
All right, next question is from Rosie. Do you not think that Diddy will be financially crippled by all of the civil lawsuits?
We can but hope. It's interesting as well with this, because what I've never understood, which makes me think that their money is not authentic and is some kind of pyramid scheme, is that, and you saw it with Kanye West, they go from being billionaire to a broke overnight. Well, where's your money? You know, that's not possible unless all of your money is in stocks and shares and it suddenly tanks. I'm sure, you know, that Diddy has probably ring fenced a lot of his finances, and he will avoid paying a lot of the civil lawsuits. You know, this is organized crime that we're looking at. When you look at his track record of being an informant and all of the other things. So, yeah.
Crystal wants to know, is every famous person compromised?
Is this relating to Diddy or Epstein?
I think that's just a general question about all famous people.
No, I mean, I think as a publicist, I would always say to clients, tell me where the skeletons are. Be honest. You need to tell me, are you compromised? Are there things I need to know? Are there fires I will potentially have to put out? Because I need to know the facts when you almost go into that stage of disclosure with press who are coming to you and saying, we've got this story. And then they give you that much. And it's kind of like inching forwards to work out how much someone has. I would say, look, celebrities are normal people. I think everyone has a past. But yeah, a lot of people are not going to tell you everything that they've done. They purposely hire a publicist to make sure you don't know.
Thanks for the super chats, Paula. Censorship at its worst. Click like and subscribe. Great guest indeed. And Jeff wants to know, do you think we'll ever see this bunch of scumbags exposed?
I don't think we'll ever get true transparency from it. No, because if you look at the industries, you know, if you look at the media industry, there is a few owners. If you look at the record industry, we're in the same position where all of the labels seem to be owned by a couple of bigger ones. You know, there's so much power that an individual can hold. And Jay-Z is a really good example of this. I was having a discussion with a friend who didn't believe how much power and influence Jay-Z had. And when I broke it down, they were really surprised. And I said, this is a masterclass in infiltrating so many different arenas. And I truly think I would struggle. I don't know if you could name anyone that has as much power as Jay-Z across the board. You know, not only is it within the NFL, it's in investments, it's also he's managing so many artists that are going to only support his narrative. He is so influential, and in politics as well. I don't see how we will ever get true transparency all of the time that these industries operate as a pyramid with, you know, 1, 2, 3 people at the top controlling it. And, you know, these are the people that when you're the top of a media outlet, or let's say you're the top of Condé Nast, you've got Vanity Fair, you've got Glamour, you've got Vogue, you've got so many outlets. With one call, you can make or break someone. That's a lot of power for someone to have.
John Davies is saying the Groucho Club in Soho is very interesting. Is that a hub for this network?
It's now, I've been to the Groucho Club once. I found it very boring. I mean, there's a lot of rumors that it was kind of quite wild. I found it anything but wild when I went. Maybe I went on the wrong night.
Yeah, I went there a long time ago.
It's very media-y. It's like your Soho House. It's where the kind of elites would flock to.
So, Natalie, do you agree with the opinion of Virginia was used as a card to expose and humiliate Prince Andrew? Then the same party that you got rid of her once the assignment was over?
Well, I think there's so many things that don't add up with the Virginia. You know, how she came to her end. I've got a lot of questions around it. Nothing makes sense to me on that. And because of that, it then makes me ask questions of, well, who else is involved in this? You know, she's on a farm in the middle of nowhere with a 70-year-old carer. Doesn't add up.
Doesn't add up. What are your thoughts on the Macron story? Is there any merit to the fact that Bridget may be a man?
Look, I'm not going to say that Candice Owens is wrong. I think Candice, you know, what I will say about her, and I don't necessarily agree with everything she says, but I don't see her risking her career on this. And this is a story as well that you have to remember that, and Candice has been very open about it, she's not done all the work on this story. There are two very prominent French journalists that have done the groundwork on this. And it's Candice that's kind of pulled it together and amplified it and taken it into the public domain. So I don't think you would have this many people that are very well respected, you know, in France and obviously Candice globally, doing this if there wasn't merit to it. And it sounds wild, you know, but then when you watch her series, it's crazy.
Have you heard of the ex-Dutch banker Ronald Bernard? I've not heard of him. He works mad at the top with the elites in the 80s, 90s, exposes so much.
No, but that's tonight's rabbit hole.
I'm not familiar. Why is Diddy asking for release at the same time Maxwell is asking to be pardoned?
I don't know. But it's funny that if you look at this, I'd be really interesting to see when there's spikes in what's happening. I doubt you're going to see a spike of Maxwell and Diddy at the same time in the agenda, you know.
Do you think Bruce Jenner was ordered to change sex?
I think you would have to ask Caitlyn Jenner that question. No.
Okay, let's see. I think we're getting.
What I do think is weird, actually, talking about Caitlyn Jenner, and no one seems to have picked up on it. Sophia Hutchins, Caitlyn's manager, lived with Caitlyn, suddenly died from a quad bike within a mile of Caitlyn's house, going off the side of a kind of dirt track. And there's nothing being said about it. You haven't seen the Kardashians come out and comment. And that, to me, I'm like, something really is weird to me about that.
There are countless channels, countless whistleblowers and witnesses. Lauren, how trustworthy are these people in your mind?
I use my experience, and I use, you know, what I have witnessed in my professional life to work out, do I think these people have integrity? Can they be trusted? Why are they doing it? And I think, you know, with a lot of them, when it comes back, like Big Homie CC, for example, is someone that I really like because it comes back to the women and children. You know, you look at the core of what's driving him. Why is he using his voice? This is something he feels really passionate about. If you are, for example, and I'm just going to paint a picture of something, if you are speaking to whistleblowers and they are asking for constantly for chunks of money for the truth and monetizing it that way, it's not for me to say whether that's right or wrong. That's their choice. But I would have some red flags about that, for example. And they might say, well, we need to fund this to be able to tell the truth, which I also understand. But I just look for someone that has integrity and that you know why they're doing it. And, you know, when it comes to the Epstein whistleblowers, you know, Juliette Bryant has been censored from the mainstream media. It's disgraceful. And you feel that not only has she gone through all of that trauma and abuse, but she's then constantly being gaslit by mainstream, who are basically saying your trauma isn't real. And then, so you have to, if you consume media and you want to consume mainstream media, by all means do, but know that there's a completely other universe that's independent, that will feature these people, because it's really important you know that just because, you know, and we've seen that as well with, like, let's talk about primary sources. People think primary sources, oh, I only believe it if I see it in the press. Well, you look at Whitney Webb and you look at Ryan Dawson and the research they've done. They have done more research than the FBI on Epstein. And it's incredible. But they don't exist in mainstream media at all. And that's wild to me, that actually what they're incredible at doing as investigators is always backing things up with primary sources, yet they're not being acknowledged as a primary source.
Lauren, you are brilliant, and the viewers, you've really resonated with the viewers.
Oh.
So viewers, please support Lauren at her links. We've got Instagram, we've got X. Put 1 in the chat if you'd like to see Lauren come back and do a part 2 at some time. Put a 2 in the chat if you want her to bog off. And I know what the answer is going to be. So yeah, is there
and desist from Maxwell, Diddy, or you know, someone in the Black Book that didn't know him though.
All ones. Is there anything you'd like to say in conclusion to the viewers, Lauren? And do you want to let the viewers know where they can find your work? I mean,
yeah.
do you broadcast yourself? Do you have your own channel and stuff? Or
no, I don't broadcast. I'm very active on Instagram. But what I would say is, you know, I've spent 20 years in mainstream media. And for me, I have, you know, I'm not charging for content. I'm not doing anything like that. All I want people to know is the truth. And I want people to know why women like Juliet Bryant and Virginia get blocked, and why people like Ryan Dawson and Whitney Webb are not acknowledged by the media. And that actually, when you break it down, and I'll do some graphics for people on my Instagram, but when you break it down, it's the media industry is really small, and the publicity industry and PRs, it's a really, really small group. You know, you're looking at a handful of people that are running the narratives. And so just continue to be critical thinkers and think outside the box. And sadly, we're in a world now where you have to work for your news, but find people that you trust and question things. And, you know, those in power are hoping that you continue to consume propaganda, so don't.
Well said. All right, viewers, like I said, please click on Lauren's links, incentivize her to come back, and hopefully she will. And thank you for tuning in. Hope to see